have you used GraphQL before? Yes. Okay, you've probably heard quite a few talks now. There's Mike Bilecki and Fran and Jamie and John Alden Wilkins did a great intro to GraphQL. So I'm going to not redo it, but a very quick overview again for those of you who don't know. And this is kind of pitched at a beginner level, just to show you how to progressively decouple. So here we go. This is my first time in the States, so I'm really excited to be here. I'm from Cape Town in South Africa, and our office is right down at the beach, so I can go for a lunchtime surf, which is amazing. So it's quite a privilege to be here, and thanks for having us. So GraphQL. So as we've heard, GraphQL is a query language for APIs and a runtime for fulfilling those queries with your data. And you can just ask for what you need, and you get exactly that back. And you can get many resources in a single request, which is really cool. Basically, you describe what's possible with the type system and access from a single endpoint. And GraphQL APIs are organized in terms of types and fields. One of the things I really like is the powerful Explorer. It's really fun to play with, and I'll show you a little video of me playing with the swappy graph cool tool, you could call it. And here I'm going to just have a look at the docs and look for people in Star Wars and get their names and a variety of other little fields and content about them. So here we're going to go all persons, look at their name and see what else comes up. Okay, there's gender there. Run the query, and we get that back. We've got Luke Skywalker, C-3PO, whole variety. Let's see what else we can get. Maybe something like the species. And here we run the query, we get a little bit of a message saying that we need something more, and we can go and look at the docs and see that it's actually an array. And let's go inside of that, and we can then get some more data. Very quick and easy. So as a front ender, I just found this so cool. It's so much fun to use. Okay, let's just click here. And a quick look at who's using GraphQL, Facebook, GitHub, a whole variety. And I wanted to show you, a lot of people only showed that slide, but if you scroll down about who's using it, the list just keeps on going and going and going. So a lot of people are using GraphQL. So it's definitely worthwhile checking out if you haven't used it yet. All right. So again, if you're wondering we're talking about GraphQL versus SQL and want to know what's under a GraphQL endpoint, there's going to be a whole lot of different things that are possible, from files to a database to a RESTful service to a content management system or another GraphQL endpoint, and that can get served through GraphQL Gateway to a variety of clients, laptops, mobile, whatever it is. And often when we're using GraphQL, you'll see it next to JSON API, decoupled builds, Apollo, React, and Vue. And for this talk, you might even see it with Twig. So firstly, why do you want to decouple? So decoupling is Drupal is really part of the future. However, it might be quite a big leap for the team if you need to learn a whole new stack like React or Vue. And so the main reason behind wanting to decouple is decoupling puts the front end in charge. So control moves from a push approach, which is Drupal's current approach, to more of a pull approach. So if we were to look at standard Drupal, it would accept a request, maps a request to a controller, and that's often where the business logic is, and it fetches the data and builds a response, and it pushes that through the theme. And so the theme acts more like a decorator. The theme controls the look and the feel and the behavior, but it ends up as the last step in the chain of command. So with soft decoupling or progressive decoupling, and because we already know Twig, that's awesome. If where theme is in Drupal 8, we can take baby steps with a soft decoupled approach by writing GraphQL inside our Twig templates. This is kind of, if some of you have used Fractal and Pattern Lab, this is that atomic design concept with vertical slicing. So in each component, you've got every aspect from the query, the styling, and the markup. So there's the GraphQL Twig module, and that enables the template or component to define its data requirements. It allows us to achieve a very clear flow of data, a data flow which significantly increases readability and maintainability. It's all in one place. It allows us to add GraphQL queries to any Twig template, and this is processed during rendering and populates the template with data. So some of you might be going, oh no, isn't this sort of a PHP template and putting SQL queries all in there again, and we got rid of that 10 years ago and we won that fight? But no, this isn't. These are GraphQL query fragments, not communicating directly with the database, as GraphQL is an application level query language and it's not a database in itself. The query is just a specification of requirements, and it's up to the schema implementation as to where to get that data. And also, I mean, why are GraphQL queries allowed in React components but not in Twig? There's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek there. And then the other question that often comes up is performance. When used with Twig, only the GraphQL processor is invoked to resolve a query. So let's just look a little bit more about the benefits for performance and other advantages. Everything is done in the same GraphQL request, and no additional HTTP requests are made. Queries are cached, and queries are grouped within multiple templates. And under the hood, it's like an additional hook. Other advantages is we still get Drupal forms, we still get translations out of the box, we still get all those nice features that Drupal has. You just switch it on and there it is, like comments. So we work alongside standard Drupal, and this reduced the risk and the cost. So yeah, as we said, we don't have to get a whole team to have to learn a whole new development stack. And that also gives us, with GraphQL, it gives us a common language between the back end and the front end. So now, a quick demo of how to get started. So we're going to require the GraphQL module with Composer. We're going to enable Twig debug just to help us see which templates we can use. We're going to flash the caches just so that introspection can occur, and we can make sure that GraphQL knows about all the different content we have, and then we can update our templates. So I'm going to do that with you now. So here we Composer require Drupal GraphQL Twig, and that pulls in all the dependencies over here and over here. Here we can switch on Twig debug, auto reload, and adjust not to cache, so it will make your developer experience much quicker. And for those of you who know or have been theming and you need to go and find some variables, you often might use Kint to go and have a look and try and find the body's text or markup variable to get that into your template. But now we can use the very cool GraphQL Explorer. So for this talk, I built myself a little React site. I'm selling these little scooters. So I initially built it statically, just with React, and I just put the data straight in there. And then when I knew I was going to do the talk, I converted it to a Drupal backend with React in the front end, with Apollo, and so my learning began. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I did with a little live demo. So firstly, with GraphQL and Twig, you can replace the full template or just augment the template. Now I'll show examples of that. GraphQL tries to match the theme variables to the query arguments. We can get all needed data for the template via GraphQL. And then as the front ender, we can have full control over data and the markup. And this is close to a fully decoupled app. So, in a sense, progressive decoupling. So here, if you have a look, in our node html.twig template, we can put our GraphQL query, almost like a comment at the top. We can query the node, where we would get the node ID. And as you can see, this is still very Drupal-y, and in the future versions of GraphQL, this will almost not even have to worry about some of the, like the node by ID, things like that, which are very Drupalese. And over here, we've got a spread operator on the node page, body processed. So that's the query that we asked for. And then we can put that in our Twig template with GraphQL.node, body processed, and I just have a raw filter at the end. And then when we have a look at that, we'll see our content. And when we hover, we'll get a little GraphQL icon. And when we click that, we end up in the Explorer, and that will show us the actual GraphQL queries, and we can run that. And I'll show you that in a little bit. So if we were to look at a little scenario as a site builder and as a back-end developer, let's say we wanted to bring the total number of nodes on a site and show on every node page. The classic site builder solution would be to create a view block with an aggregated query. We'd go and place that block on all the node pages, and then go to the block layout and place the block there. If we're a backend developer, we would probably do a preprocess hook for the node. We'd run a query to get the number of nodes, and then override the template to show the value. But now with GraphQL, we can just do a query directly in the template. So we can run GraphQL query nodes, node query count, and there we have the amount of nodes on the site. Another scenario here, what about what languages are available? With GraphQL and Twig, again, we can do a query. We just naming the query here languages, get the available languages and name, and here we can just do a little for loop over the languages in a list, and we can have the language name. So what about other things like lists? What if we want to list the amount of products on the site? So you might just be concerned, well, we're accessing all this data that's not really meant to be in the node template, but just to remember that all this data is still curated by Drupal's permission system. So over here on the right, I'm doing a little filter on products. I'm putting the count in here, and here you can see it in the template. Products on the site are 4, and the author name by user ID 1, and I get that right there. So that's pretty basic. What if we wanted to add a list of users? So here again, we can just, in the node template, directly go users, user query with the count, list, then all the entities, and then we're just naming, so the entity label is normally the username, and we're just going to name it there. And then we've got our list of users directly in the node template. One of the extra modules you can switch on is GraphQL views, and that allows you to, like a normal site builder, to create a view, but then use that view in your templates with the GraphQL query. So here, I've got my node ID, and I'm going to pass that to Drupal views with the context ID. And here is the name of the view, article list, and I'll show you that in a little demo afterwards. And here's the result data with the entity label. In our Twig template, then we can create a list just with a for loop over that result set and print it out. And then we have a list of related articles coming straight from Drupal views. So instead of having to create a view block and then try and place it somewhere in one of the regions on your page, now you can do it directly in the template wherever you would like. So a quick recap of the advantages of just progressive decoupling with GraphQL and Twig. Again, you can augment the template's available variables. There's no pre-processing needed. You can put the query in the same file as your node template, or you can put it outside with a GraphQL extension. You could request any kind of data in any template. There are no additional trips to the server to request data, and there's no need to decouple fully. But if you wanted to, it's pretty easy to partly decouple further with maybe some React components on certain parts of your site, or to fully decouple later on, because now your team knows how to do GraphQL queries and put them in the templates. So in a sense, that's future-proofing your site. So if you wanted to take those extra steps, and this is kind of pseudocode, but on the left you have your GraphQL in Twig, in the node template, and on the right is a React component. We've taken out some of the other Apollo things and imports, but basically we're just creating a constant we've got our GraphQL query here, and it's almost exactly the same, very similar, and then we're just doing a query with React Apollo, passing in the query, loading, getting the data, and returning the result set. And you can see how similar it is, so it wouldn't be too hard to convert that to work with React or Vue or Angular. One thing just to think about if you do fully decouple further is your cores settings, depending on how you set up your backend and front end. And if you're adding new fields, make sure just to flash your caches so that introspection can occur. And GraphQL can become aware of your content types and all the fields on your content types. So I think we've got a little time for a demo, and I'll come back to these slides. But if you want to dig a little bit further into a few webinars that we've done with Amazy Labs, we've got a full set of blog posts all the way from beginner to advanced, and a lot of video webinars where you can watch this whole thing unfold, where we talk about GraphQL and Twig, and then using Pattern Lab and other like Fractal with the atomic design concepts, and a few other presentations which are definitely worthwhile seeing. So I want to quickly show you, here's my little website. This is an unstyled version. I'm using Bartik. I just made a custom theme with Bartik. And over here is my About page. As you can see, as I hover, I get the GraphQL little icon, and when I click it, let me go there. It goes to GraphQL Explorer, where the query gets put in on the left, and when you run it, you get the data back for the site, for the page. Now, something here which is quite cool, because you'd normally have to use a module like similar by terms to get related articles. What we've done here is, on this article 3 page, I wanted to see related articles that are related by tags. So what I did is I created a view with, you go add GraphQL, then you get this display type. I'm going to show published articles, and on the right I've got a contextual filter, and I'm filtering by ID. Over here we get a query name, and what I do is put that into our GraphQL request over here, and by putting it inside this query, it gets the context of the current page node ID, and that way, if you look at this view, the node ID gets passed to the view. So that means you can sort of combine your current understanding of views and do some powerful views filtering and things like that, and then put that in your query. So if we run this, you'll see the query returns these articles, which have the same tag, and the rest of the page. Something that's quite fun as well to show you how GraphQL can work with a variety of sources is, if I go back to this page, I took the Powered by Drupal block and I updated a little bit, by a call called want1, and that's our administrator, and the amount of bugs on the Drupal project page. To do this, I use the GraphQL XML module, and if I go and have a look at the page, you can see the bug report over there, and this class and link. What we've done is we created a query with an external path. Now this may be not something you should do, but I just want to show you the power of GraphQL and how you can pull other sources of data straight into your template if you wanted to. So it's not only in Drupal. We're requesting the XML path, we're going down the tree, we're finding the class with the issue cockpit 1, div A, and when we run that, we get our result. So let's just do that in the, yeah, if we can run like that. And there we go, we've got the amount of bugs on the current Drupal, the live Drupal page, and then in our template we print that out, and we've got data from somewhere else other than Drupal. So I just thought that was pretty cool, just to show the versatility of different data sources for GraphQL. And as a front-end developer, there's just some things where I was like, oh, I wish I could just pull that information with a view, but it's a little bit tricky to get it into that part of the template. And now, if you switch on GraphQL, and because it's so fast and performant, we can now get data that we would not normally be able to do without a pre-processed hook and a whole lot of other maybe custom modules. And it's really fun to do as well. So, I've now finished. I hope that was fun, a little bit quick. Are there any questions? Yeah, Michael. No.
Maybe more like an understanding. So Drupal already brings a lot of templates, and they all don't have Twig. So in a site that you actually build, do you throw away all the regular stuff and completely rebuild it with GraphQL, or what's like the standard? Because then suddenly you have two systems in the Twig file. How do you handle that?
Well, you can use both at the same time.
Yeah.
And let me just quickly switch over to, let's have a look here. I mean, in this case, I've totally removed everything in the Node article template. But you could have a little bit of Twig.
But what's your preference? What do you like to do?
I prefer it more clean, and this way it's just using GraphQL. But again, if you've already got a site with a full Twig template, but there's some extra data you want to do, and it's just too much of a pain to do a pre-process function, then you could then just do a query like, you could just put the query outside if you don't want to put everything in one file, and then you could mix and match with the normal Twig template, and then adding in some GraphQL as well.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
The follow-up question from that then, if you can mix and match, you can still, the pre-process hooks still run the same way. So if you want to, so in a terrible world, we wouldn't do this, but let's say we did, you would have GraphQL stuff that you can pull in, but you could also force in variables in the old Twig way through a pre-process hook and do all sorts of database stuff.
Yes. So you could slowly add,
yeah,
and maybe clean out some things, and as you go, you could, very progressively add new data to your templates.
Has there been any benchmarking to test speeds of like a pre-processed hook versus a GraphQL?
All I know is that from Philip, who's been writing the module, he said it's very performant. You can't even notice it, so it's very much like a hook with the same amount of time to render that. Yeah.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Just to mention that, just to say we don't have any actual data, though we should probably get some. But the awesome thing about GraphQL is often when, for example, you're rendering your own template, you want to get some extra data from that node entity. So the actual loading, the cache is already warm for that node data. So you're not reloading extra stuff. And if you are reloading extra stuff, GraphQL has really good caching. So once you hit that query once, it caches it, and then it's like super fast. But we probably should get some actual benchmarking data.
Yeah, if you do notice something that's going a little bit crazy, maybe you've got a whole lot of queries that are querying and things are getting a bit heavy, like what Michael mentioned, there are ways to do is it benchmarking? I can't remember the term exactly that we use, but you can give different queries different weights to make sure that just it's not getting using up too much, what's the word, processing. Great.
I'd have one more question. Have you had any experience teaching any of sort of more junior or more intro level front-end themers or front-end people to use GraphQL and Twig? Because pre-process hooks are exceptionally difficult to teach to people because you need to have a sense of, you need to be able to code in PHP to some extent. And this is actually more describing what you want and giving that extra abstraction. So I'm interested to know if you've had that opportunity, A, and B, if you noticed an easier uptake or an easier adoption.
Well, I could only, in our team at the moment, I've almost just had to teach myself.
Right.
And I found it really easy because it looked very much like Twig, but then also having done React components, it also felt very much like that,
Right.
and that understanding. So soon with our sort of newest team members, we're going to be doing this. And I just have a feeling they're going to take to it very easily.
Yeah. Also, the cool thing is that you never need to jump into any of the pre-processing PHP stuff. So you just got the GraphQL tool to run the queries, and then a Twig template that any kind of front-end read person can understand, because they can just rewrite the query in one place, copy-paste it, and then just use it in the template. So they never ever need to even open a PHP file. So it's pretty easy to get going.
Sweet. Then that's it. Thank you so much for your time.